Welcome to South Florida saltwater fishing. I'm Heath, and it's time to get into the bite.
Wahoo in the boat, baby! That kingfish right there. There we go. I mean, you talk about epic fishing days. Yeah! Nice bull dolphin right there. Double header! Woohoo! Look at that muzzle snapper!
Alright folks, in this episode we're going to go over how to take apart, do some routine service and maintenance, and put back together the PENN 114H, also known as the PENN 6.0. Before we get into this though, if you want to learn more about fishing, grow as an angler, or just see some great and exciting offshore fishing adventures, you can start by hitting the subscribe button. And don't forget to turn on the notification bell so that you won't miss a thing. Alright folks, so like I said, we are going over the quintessential PENN classic reel. One of the most popular PENN conventional reels ever to be sold on the planet. And what we're going to do, like I said, is we are going to go over how to strip this down entirely, do some routine service and maintenance, and put it back together. So let's get into this. Alright, so we've got our PENN 6.0. The first thing we are going to do is we're going to remove the handle. So the first thing we need to do is remove a set screw that is right here. Our pliers, try to get a fairly good grip on it. And then you just unwind it. And your handle comes off just like that. Now you have a spacer that will come off with your handle, and then you just unwind your star drag all the way off. Take that off. The next thing that comes off is your tension spacer on your star drag, and then you get off this ring. What we have next to come off, which you may have to turn it upside down if it's on there pretty good with grease, is there's a keyed washer on here. Now the next thing we will do is we will remove the posts and the reel seat. So we will start with the right side of the reel. The screws that are going to come out of the posts are going to be longer than the screws that come out of the reel seat. This is a post screw. Let me show you what a reel seat screw looks like. That is a reel seat screw. And now we'll take out the post screws. Alright, and now our right side of our reel pops off of our spool. Now we can take our spool out. Now we come over to this side and we can just sort of unwind our posts. Pull our screws out. On the non-handle side, this is a post screw versus a post screw on the handle side. It's longer. So you're going to want to sort of separate all your screws that came off your handle side, which is known as the right side. So we'll continue removing post screws. And now we will finish removing the reel seat. The screw holding the reel seat on the non-handle side is also significantly shorter than the screw holding on the reel seat from the handle side. So you want to just take note of that, which is why I said it's going to be wise to keep those two sets of screws separated. Alright, our reel seat is undone. We can remove the harness loop, and then we can kind of take off what is known as the beauty rings. The beauty rings can be kind of tough sometimes, so you might have to stick a screwdriver in there and get them off. I'm going to unscrew the spool tensioner. There's the screw and the bearing. And that is your left side of your reel entirely disassembled. Alright, and now we're going to disassemble what is a little bit more complicated, which is the handle side, the right side. So when you're going to pull apart beauty rings and harness loop, if you can't get the beauty ring off or something seems to be kind of seized, you can always use the harness loop. Oops, gotta be careful. Now we will remove the eccentric lever. So we'll put it in free spool and just get the little star. There we go. And pop off your eccentric lever. So now we are going to remove what is known as the bridge. This is this piece. And loosen up. You want to just hold it in there because it's going to get pushed out against you. You're going to feel pressure because there's springs that hold your handle in. Oh, so the eccentric just fell out, like I said. You're going to kind of want to hold it in there tight. Now, this screw right here that just came out, it's very important that you notice it is fully threaded versus your other screws that are only going to have a handful of threads, not even a quarter of the way threaded. Alright, so now that we've got that loose, we can remove our bridge. Oh, and the dog came out with it. So if you look inside here, you have these two springs. Those are going to be your non-threaded screws. The two screws that go in here are going to hold on the dog. And then there's also a spring that comes out that holds the dog in place. And our springs come out, and then we can pop out the bearing. So the next thing that we do is we take out the pinion, and this is the yoke, and then we have what is known as the jack. Now what we're going to do is we're going to remove our gear and what is called the drag stack. So when you take it apart, you want to be very careful and notice how your drag stack is assembled. It can be tricky to take apart, but you just, like I said, you just want to undo it piece by piece. So once you've got all of your drag stack out, let me kind of shift everything over here so that we can see what's going on and not make a mess. You'll notice that there is a fiber drag washer, an eared washer, a fiber drag washer, a keyed washer, and then another fiber drag washer. So you'll want to take note of how all these washers were put together and not really lose the order of them. Alright, the next thing we can do is remove this other beauty ring. And now our handle side, our right side, is all taken apart. Now what we're going to do is we are going to remove the spindle off the bridge so that we can get it all cleaned up. So if you're dealing with a bunch of grease, which you will while you are taking apart your reels, what you're going to want to do is spray some denatured alcohol. Don't use rubbing alcohol. You want to get yourself a jar of denatured alcohol, and that will help you keep it clean and be able to work around your area. This is our bridge. Like I said, we're going to remove our spindle off our bridge. And I give it a good little wipe down with some alcohol. Get it all nice and cleaned up. So to remove this spindle here, there's a little pin. That goes right in there. You got to knock that out because that's set inside of a groove that's on the post that holds it in. And after a couple of hits, you will see the pin slowly starting to remove itself. And you just keep working at it. And it will come out. You just continue to hit it until it comes all the way out, which it just did. And there's your pin. And now your spindle comes off, and there's your bridge. So now that we've got the pin out, what we are going to do is we are going to clean all of the grease off of all of our parts and pieces from our handle side. Then we'll clean off the grease from in there. Denatured alcohol. It doesn't have to be perfect, but you want it to be, you want to really get all the old grease off as best you can. Clean all the grease off the covers best we can. Alright, there's our handle side cleaned up. And there we have it. That's as cleaned up as it's going to get. This click lever right here and this tension spring for your click lever does not come off. It's been riveted into the plastic housing. Regular salt. Pour it in one jar. Basically, pour it in another jar. Put white vinegar in it. This one we're going to fill almost all the way up because we will put our spool in it. You kind of want to mix it up and get that salt mixed in there so you have a solution and not a bunch of salt sitting on the ground. And we'll set our spool down in there. Non-handle components, screws and everything. It's not going to hurt them at all. This is the handle side that we're putting everything in. We're just going to drop everything in there. Alright, so now we've got everything in our vinegar and salt solution. So we're just going to let it sit for overnight. Alright, so now that we've let all the components rest for 24 hours in the salt and vinegar bath, we are going to rinse off all these components, then we're going to dry them off, and then we're going to reassemble the reel. So we're going to get our water going, a little bit of warm water, and we're simply going to dump all of our parts and pieces in there. Alright, so all we did was rinse it all off. That way we can get the salt off. Now we're going to go dry it up and start reassembling. Alright, so now we're going to begin reassembling this. The first side that we're going to do is the more tricky side, which is your handle side. Before I go further, I want to explain something. On older models, which is this Senator, this piece is more open. So when you put your drag gear in, it's open and you can actually put your drag stack in from this end, which is the handle side. On newer models, this is more closed, so you have to assemble your drag stack first and sort of balance it and stick it up in. What we're going to need to do this assembly is PENN gear grease, put a few dabs of oil on specific parts. The first thing we're going to do is we are going to reassemble the eccentric. Grease this up everywhere. Put some grease down in your threads. Now the next thing we got is we're going to put on our spring. This spring has a little tooth right here. That tooth goes up into a hole on your lever, and when you put it in, this piece right here goes behind this little knob. And there you go. Now on the outside, you push out. You just want to kind of pull it so that it gets balanced. and then you reverse it. Alright. Alright, our eccentric is reassembled. Drop our bearing back down into the center where it goes. Going to give a dab of oil. Now the next part we're going to do is we're going to put these springs back in, and we're going to drop in the pinion gear and the yoke, and grease up our jack. And then we'll take our pinion gear and we're going to grease that up real good. Get it in all the grooves. The way this goes together is you've got a groove here. You're going to put your yoke on there. Your yoke is the loop part of it is going to sit facing the eccentric. You balance it on top of your springs and you make sure you can push it down. Grease up this post right here. We are going to push down on the yoke and the pinion, and we are going to get that set right in there. If we push down on it further and we put our reel into free spool, we can just leave that like that. Alright, so the next part we have to do is we have to reassemble our bridge. Grease up the stud that our spindle sits on. Grease the bottom of the dog gear. And we are going to put it back on there. Alright, good to go. We took out this little pin that is a retaining pin that holds it in. So what we need to do is we need to get that retaining pin back in. To get it started is I am going to try and force it in just to start it enough with a pair of pliers. There we go. It gets started, and then we can use when you're done, you want to make sure that it sits flush. That way your drag stack gear can slide on and off without getting hung up on it. So what we are going to do is we are going to grease it up real good. Your little threads down in there. Now the next thing that I didn't replace that I should have is a little spacer, a little buffer pad that goes between your dog gear and your drag stack gear. But I'm going to work with it. Like I said, I should have replaced it, but I didn't. Alright, now we will drop our drag stack gear back on top of it. And there we go. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to examine how to put our dog in. The dog only goes one way. It has to sit flush against the teeth. If you put it in this way, it won't. So right now we are in like that, so we have to put it in like this. So we'll leave it like that facing up. You're going to take one of the fully threaded screws. So you're going to put that screw right in there, and you are going to take your dog and put it in just like that. Now what we are going to do is we are going to take our bridge, kind of a little balancing trick. You don't want that screw to fall out. And we are going to work it in there. What we are going to do is we need to get it all the way down. That our dog reacts with the tooth of the dog gear. We are going to take our spring that loads the dog. We're going to grease that up. It is going to go right in here. and then you push and fit it down in there, just like that. And now we are going to slowly shift our bridge up over the jack. We are going to push down that screw flush. We are going to realign the jack. Now we are going to take our screw on the outside and we are going to lock in our bridge. Now we are going to take the two non-fully threaded screws and we are going to put them up in here, and we are going to fasten them in, and then we will do the other non-threaded screw. These are going through the springs that hold the yoke in place. Alright, just give it a little wiggle. Those in place. And now we will do the last fully threaded screw. And then you just tighten them all down. And there you have it. See how your pinion, your gear, your spool pinion is engaged. You pull it back to free spool and it should feel kind of loose. So that's the tricky part, getting that bridge and all that, doing that kind of balancing act. Now it's on to the easy stuff. Alright, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to put on the beauty rings. Now you have an inner beauty ring and an outer beauty ring. The way you tell it is if you look at the outer beauty ring, it has sort of countersunk holes that the screws will sit flush in. We're going to grease up our beauty ring a little bit. We'll want to line up our holes as best we can and seat it back down onto the plate. And now we will do the outside. So to get this beauty ring on the outside, you're going to want to balance your eccentric right in the middle, and you're going to clip it on, wiggle it on through underneath. There's a groove right here that's cut into it. You put that down on that groove, and then you just line them up with a screwdriver. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take our harness ring and we're going to put it on. Alright, we're going to attach a post to the harness ring. Put a little bit of grease. Going to drop the screw in. Don't over tighten it. So the next step is we are going to reassemble our handle. Alright, so the way this goes is you drop in a fiber gear washer, then you're going to drop in a keyed washer, then you're going to drop in a fiber gear washer, then you will take the eared washer. Call it an eared washer because it's got these little ears on it, and there are grooves where those ears will sit down in your drag gear. Then you will get another fiber drag washer, and then your final keyed washer. Then we have the collar for the handle that will go on, and we have a tension washer that will go on top of that. Now we will put on a little grease on our threads, tighten down our star drag, then we have a tension washer. If you see how it's pushed out, the side that bows out is the outside. We will put on our handle and our little star screw. We are going to tighten down our star screw until it lines up with where our set screw is. Now we are going to take our set screw. We are going to get it in at an angle. Kind of set it in there. And then we will tighten down our set screw. When you click your handle, it should not back spool. Your dog should be active. And now we're going to put together the easier of the two. This is your non-handle side, also known as your left side. We are going to grease up the click trigger, dab oil to the click trigger. The next thing we're going to do is we are going to put our spool tensioner on. Put some grease. Good to go. Put a little bit of grease on there. Next order of business is our beauty rings. Grease it up. Line that up. You can actually put a harness loop in. Good to go. Right there, like so. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take our remaining posts, put some grease on the threads. We've got all of our screws. Now remember, when we disassembled it, the shorter screws go to the real stand or the real seat. We already have a post here, which is on our handle side, so we won't put that post in, but we can do all the other ones. There we go. Give it a little bit of help. And we'll take a post and we will hand tighten it on there. And then we're just going to repeat the process for where the other posts go. Now, make sure your real seat, you don't put posts where the real seat's going to go, which are these bottom 3 holes. And again, we only want to kind of hand tighten these. We don't want to over crank them. Alright, so we have one more screw for the final post where the harness ring will go. Just our screw in here. Get it lined up with our center hole. Don't tighten it real good. You want it to have some wiggle. Then we'll do the next screw. And your final real seat screw. Now these ones you can go on ahead and cinch them down once you have all 3 pre-threaded. And that is our left side. Good to go. Grease up our spool gear real good, and we take it. Nice. And engage our gear. Perfect. This stud right here is what is going to go onto the handle. There is a slot here at the bottom of your spool. That slot is almost rectangular shape. And if you look here on your pinion, it will fit right in that groove. We're going to insert the post there. Your bearing back into place. Now you see we still have a gap. Once you find that groove on your pinion, you will have no space in between your posts and your 2 sides. Our final screw from our left side, and we are going to put that in and line that up with the post that attaches to the handle side. And again, you don't want to tighten up any of these until you're ready to rock and roll and you've got them all done. Now we are going to take our screws we are going to attach all of our posts. Real seat screws. Final real seat screw. And now we are just basically going to tighten everything down as tight as it can go. You can always put a screwdriver on the opposite side. And now on the non-handle side, the left side, we'll just tighten down those post screws. And we're done. Test out our drag. Alrighty. Alright, there we have it. So when you're reeling forward, retrieving your line, your handle should not back spool. If it does, you've done something wrong and you need to redo it. Alright. We are in free spool there. Works good. Click. Good to go. Drag. Oh yeah, that works real good. Loosen that up. That's what those tension washers are for. Alright. There we have it. PENN Senator 6.0, the 114H. Alright folks, and so there you have it. The PENN Senator, the 6.0, also known as the 114H. Showed you how to tear it down and reassemble it in its entirety. You're going to want to learn how to do this and manhandle your reels and not be intimidated. I get it that the Senator has quite a few parts and pieces when it comes to the handle, which can be intimidating. That's the bridge, the yoke, the jack, and your drag sack and everything that goes in here and sits on your pinion gear and lets you retrieve it. But once you take it apart, you understand what these parts and pieces are doing and how they interact with each other, it's not real bad. Trust me when I say you take one of these reels to a tackle shop, for them to even open it up, it's 75 bucks. Alright folks, that about does it for this episode. Hope you enjoyed, hope you had fun, and I hope you learned a little bit about taking apart and putting back together the PENN Senator 6.0, the 114H. Till next time, South Florida saltwater fishing, going wherever the cool wind takes us.